Hello everyone, my name is Paul Opia, right, the editor-in-chief of Ilkeston Life. And then we're here today with Dr. Adam Thompson, our political candidate, Labour Party, and then Tilly Brown, and then I'm here as our interviewer.
Right.
Tilly, do you want to first of all tell us what you do?
Well, I go to Bilber College. I'm a student, and I study 3 A levels of history, politics, and biology. Biology's a bit random, but
Random is good, Tilly. Random is definitely good.
Yeah. Can you share some of the key aspects from your personal background and experiences that helped shape your decision to run for the office in Erewash?
Yes, certainly. Thanks for asking. So, I've been here for about 8.5 years. I moved here when I was doing my PhD. I went to Nottingham University. I spent a long time in schools working with kind of pupils and like learning about the world and how to teach. But at that time, it was 2013, 2014, and that was when the government, the current government, Conservative government, was making a lot of changes in education. And I really didn't think that they were the right things for the young people that I was interacting with. I felt like we were going backwards. I felt like that we weren't looking forwards. And I really felt like, there was more of a focus on dogma than there was on actually improving the way that kids learn. So I kind of started paying more attention to politics. Halfway through the first year of my PhD, we had the general election in 2015, and everybody went into that general election expecting to have a Labour government. Right at the last minute, there was a change in the polls, and we woke up in the morning, and out of the blue, as far as I was concerned, there was a Conservative government, and I woke up and I was like, oh no, this wasn't what I wanted. I really wanted to have a Labour government again. I really felt that that was the right thing for the country. A couple of months after that, we moved closer to the area because I was doing this PhD at Nottingham, and we moved to a little house in Sandy Acre. We lived there for 4 years before we moved to Long Eaton about 4.5 years ago. I moved to the area and I kind of just got involved in the local party. Never intended on being a candidate, but I got to meet a load of the local members of the party, and I started going out door knocking and speaking to people on doorsteps, and I kind of started getting more and more involved in the community. In 2017, I'd been around for a couple of years. My colleague in the Labour Party phoned me up and says, we've got a parish council by-election in Sandy Acre. Do you fancy being the candidate? And I said, I don't know, I'm not sure if being a politician is for me. I'm not sure that's something that I kind of want to do, to be honest. But over the course of the next few years, I stood for the council a few times. I got very involved in local campaigns. And then ultimately, when the chance to put myself forward to be the Labour candidate for the next general election came around, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. And here I am as your candidate.
All right, thank you. Do you think your unique perspective is important in the House of Commons?
100%. In fact, some of the work I did a few years ago, I was involved in an organisation called Scientists for Labour. Kind of does exactly what it says on the tin, really. So it was a group of Labour-orientated scientists, and we did a lot of work through COVID, linking up the shadow cabinet with experts in COVID science to kind of help advise the shadow cabinet. And one of the things that I did in Scientists for Labour was I spent years saying there needs to be more people who understand science and politics. And ultimately, somebody turned around one day and said, hey, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Why don't you be a candidate yourself? So yes, as a scientist and as an educator throughout the whole of the kind of 10 years of my career, I think it's really important that we've got people with backgrounds like that. And there aren't that many politicians with scientific backgrounds.
I'm an engineer. I work for Rolls-Royce in Derby. I've lived in Erewash nearly 10 years now. My main reason for wanting to stand or get involved in this way is that I want to help people out. At work, I'm a union member, something slightly unusual for a Liberal Democrat to be also a union member and representative at work. So I've helped out colleagues when they get into difficulties with the company there. I've also been the equalities officer for my branch of the Unite Union at Rolls-Royce, and through that I was able to get the branch to give a significant donation to the Canaan Trust's recent appeal on the female homelessness shelter, and that was really good to be able to do that. Yes. And as you can imagine, qualities is something I'm really passionate about, and one of the other reasons I'm standing. I did a law degree whilst I was working at at Rolls-Royce a Masters in Law, and I concentrated in that on diversity and equality legislation. So I've got a little bit of a legal background as well, which makes me, I think, a good candidate. And I feel that those people who could be good MPs ought to put themselves forward.
Well, yeah, I'm a veteran teacher of 20 years, teaching history, geography, whatever else is needed at the moment. Background, I was born in the north of Ireland at the time of the Troubles. My parents were civil rights activists. I've always stood up for what I think is right, what I believe in. I teach young people because I think young people are the future. I think young people get a really rough deal. I think Erewash is seeing a brain drain and a lot of people leaving. And I'm kind of tired of educating like 2,500 children and just seeing them leave because there's nothing in the area. And watching the last 20, 25 years, the deindustrialisation, the managed decline of this community, it's just downtrodden, beaten down. So I'm a fighter. And that's what I've always done. I fight for education, I fight for what I believe in, I'll stand up for what I believe in. I don't care what the consequences are, I'll do what I think is right. Too many politicians now do what the party tells them, they do what they're told to do. I'm not a fan of being told what to do. I will do what I think is fair. I will do what I think is right for the community, regardless if it's easy. I will do the hard thing if it's the right thing to do. And I think, again, a lot of our politicians do what they're told to do, the easy route. And unfortunately, they've lost accountability. They've lost the essence of democracy, which should be grassroots, should be driven up, should be driven by the people. So I'd be a candidate who would represent the views of the people, listen to all people, not pick and choose who I think is important. Down at the golf club with the secret handshakes and all those kind of guys that have the sort of the squiggles behind their names. I would be the person who would go down to Parliament and want to be the person in Parliament representing the people in Parliament, and be that guy that I'd be privileged and proud to represent the people of this area.
Well, I think it's obviously I've been representing Erewash now for over 9 years, so I think I'll go back before that. And yeah, I began my working life in the NHS, and then in the private sector, and then ran my own business for almost 19 years. And during those later years, I got involved in community campaigning, and that really gave me a flavour of politics. And I thought, if I don't actually do something about it, I may live to regret it. Because I love fighting for what's right for the communities.
That's right.
So I put myself forward to be the Member of Parliament, and fortunately I was selected for Erewash because to me it's a wonderful, wonderful place. People are so friendly, and they tell you what they think as well.
Yeah.
They don't hold back, which is good. I like both aspects of that. And it's been really good to be able to work with the community and get it right for the community.
Great. So how do you believe your unique background and perspective will contribute to your effectiveness?
It's the Erewash constituency, and some parts of the borough go into mid Derbyshire.
Yeah.
But I think, my hopefully what I've done in the past 9 years will let people realise that I want to continue with my plans. One of the very first things that I did was to ensure that we kept the opening of the train station in Ilkeston on track.
Which
because
I was there,
that's right, that was an
yes.
amazing day
Yes,
in
was.
early 17, April 17. And because at one stage we thought we might lose it because of great crested newts and various other things, but I fought and fought and fought to keep it, if you excuse the pun, on track, and then move on from there.
Yes.
So once again, that was community campaigning to make sure we got it right for people of Erewash, and I think it's shown just what an impact it's had for people to be able to get to work easier, that connectivity, and also be able to socialise in other places as well. And then I've gone on from that, and I made the case to get the town fund money for that went to Long Eaton, £25 million, and then whenever I speak in Parliament, very rarely do I ask a question without mentioning Erewash. So I think people have got the message.
That's right.
So from that, we've gone on to get shared prosperity funding. We've just been allocated £5 million cultural levelling up funding. And just last weekend, the Prime Minister said that if we were re-elected, then there'll be £20 million allocated to Ilkeston. So it wouldn't be a choice.
I got down the press release from McCarthy.
Yeah, so once again, that's really, really good news, because we do need to level out across the borough as well. So I'm really pleased, across the constituency, that we're getting equal quantities of money for both towns. Because that spreads across the villages as well. Everybody benefits from there. More jobs, better economy, and we move forward. So that's the sort of thing I want to continue, as well as breaking it down to helping so many constituents, but things that are important to them. It's quite often it could be housing issues, it could be benefits issues, lots of different things that I never sing and dance about because they're very personal to the individual that I help. I mean, I've helped tens of thousands of constituents, sometimes on a repeat basis over the last 9 years, with issues that are impacting on them.
So let's move on to the policy positions. So what do you consider to be the 3 most pressing issues facing Erewash, and what specific policy proposals do you have to address them?
I think the cost of living has obviously been very impactful, and I'm really pleased that now inflation has got down to very low level completely, and I think from that we can build up the economy again. Interest mortgage rates are going to be coming down, which is really good. So people have more money in their pocket, which means they can spend more and boost the economy, which once again is really good for everybody. For all the businesses around here, and Paul for the smoothie bar as well, for people to come in here and get a coffee. So I think that's important to make people feel better about their own circumstances. So that's what we want to continue with the plan we've got because it's working. We can't go back to square one. I think the other important issue, especially for Erewash, has been the migrant hotels that have been used near Junction 25 of the M1, and I'm delighted. I mean, obviously it's important that we make sure that people who come here destitute and looking for a better life are well looked after, but a hotel's not the right place for them. So they need to be processed in a timely fashion and then get to the right place. But as of just yesterday, the Novotel now has been closed for more migrants, and it's been renovated back to its original intended purpose. So we need it as a hotel. We need people to come and be able to stay overnight here. We need the conferences there and the weddings there. And I won't give up until we actually get the second hotel closed. It's better for the community, and it's better for those who have been placed there. Just recently I visited the Eltham Community Hospital, where they're building a completely new community diagnostic centre. They're renovating some of the rooms and sort of expanding, and we'll have the state-of-the-art scanner just in Ilkeston. So it means everybody across Erewash can use it, and wider afield as well. There'll be an open scanner, so people who are claustrophobic won't be fearful. But also there'll be other tests available. So that will speed up the time to diagnosis, which speeds up to the time to treatment, which then is better outcomes. And it's right on our doorstep. And that's another £5 million of investment in the heart of our community.
Where do you start? There's a list of last 14 years of austerity. There's a list of issues that the priorities, I suppose, are the things that we can do straight away. And that's got to be the immediate concerns when it comes to health. We saw during the pandemic how important our health system is. We saw how lorded out our nurses and our doctors are. So I'm going to be down supporting our junior doctors who are on strike. And I'd be remiss of me as a Green to say that our environment does not also need looked at in this area. We have pristine green areas that are being neglected. We have the worst rivers, the 5th, the 8th and the 11th worst rivers in the country going through our system. We have 10% of the local population who has got pulmonary, heart and lung problems as a result of dirty air. We live close to the M1, and nobody wants to say the awkward thing is we're living in a polluted environment which costs us more in the long run. So I don't believe you can identify single issues. It's the whole lot really needs looked at, root and branch. Look at how we live, where we live, and we look at our systems, and in particular we have to start with our public sector. We have to start with the services that we need. This bus services need to be introduced, the health services need to be introduced, the social care system needs to be introduced, old people need looked after in their own homes. We need to get the community back. I want to empower the community. So we start with the confidence of the community. Start with making the community believe that they can actually believe in themselves any longer, just not accepting the low standards that we've been given.
Like you said, around Erewash there's a lot of beautiful area, but at the minute it's being sold to different corporations. And so, what would you do to protect that land?
Well, we work with the stakeholders. We work with the individual residents. I'm a big fan of what I saw recently, which was the local campaign to protect the Peewit. And I'm again looking at the Green Squeeze campaign, looking at the Kirkhallam campaign, looking at the Cotmany campaign. I'm a people power person. People get out there and have always fought what they believe in. If they want to keep their countryside pristine, you just try and build something and watch every village in Erewash campaign against it. People do care about their environment. I think people reconnected a lot with the environment again through COVID when they were taking their walks around the area and they rediscovered parts of their old childhood. And many people I talked to went, I never realised there was a hidden gem, like the Hermit's Cave, just the other side of a housing estate like Kirkhallam. This is a beautiful, beautiful area and it needs to be preserved. It's steeped in history, it's steeped in culture. Boris Johnson talked about, build back better. I think it's better what we've built. We need to renovate, regenerate, and ensure, protect the things that we want to protect.
There's no two ways about it. We're in a cost of living crisis, and in fact I would probably go as far as a cost of surviving crisis, because living implies a standard that many people are struggling to meet. And the Liberal Democrats did call for a windfall tax, which the government has subsequently adopted and watered down, but we have got that windfall tax, and the Liberal Democrats were hoping to put that into people's energy bills to reduce those to the levels they saw before the cost of living crisis. So we want fair action on the cost of living crisis. We want the people of Erewash to get a fair deal on a number of areas, because I think quite a lot of the people reading or listening or watching this will know that, or think that they don't get a fair deal from national government. We want a fair deal for the NHS as well, and to untie the NHS's hands in terms of capital investment as well, and try and free up the NHS so they can spend the money where they think it's necessary. Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, talks a lot about his personal experience, his cancer stories, because he lost his father to cancer very early on in his life, and his mother, well, whilst he was at school. And we all have our own personal cancer stories that we could tell. I lost my father 6 years ago to a cancer that he was just on the cusp of the expected age range for, and one that you find very late on, or the doctors find very late on, and you can't do anything once you've found it. So we have these personal stories about why we want to essentially take the fight to cancer and really fund the NHS properly, so that we can cut the waiting lists back to a reasonable level, so you get seen before it's too late. It's apt to talk about that today, because there's been reports out that the incidence of cancer in young people is rising, and they have no idea why. And then we want a fair deal for the environment. Definitely. And in Erewash we've been on the bad end of that, because the government has let water companies dump sewage into our rivers and streams. Erewash is a constituency named after a river, to be dumping sewage into the Erewash, into the Golden Brook in Long Eaton that flows through West Park. It should not happen.
It should.
So I spend a lot of time kind of knocking on doors. So I usually go out a few times a week, a couple of evenings, all day on the weekend, on a Saturday. And the first thing I always say when I speak to people on doorsteps is, hey, how are you? And have you got any issues to raise? So I would say the things that kind of come up most often at the moment is the cost of living crisis. Yes. And it's the fact that the price of everything has gone up through the roof. Energy bills, so my own mortgage went up a couple of grand earlier this year. It was crackers. And yeah, the price of everything is just really shooting up. So that's the thing that probably is coming up most often. Aside from that, like local issues, we talk about town centres a lot, and it's really nice to be here with Paul, who does a huge amount of work trying to regenerate Ilkeston's town centre. And I've been involved in one of Paul's committees over the past few weeks in the sort of new Friends of Ilkeston Town Centre in some efforts to regenerate town centres. I think that kind of work is really important, but it's one of the things that comes up a lot is that if you walk up and down Bath Street or up and down the High Street in Long Eaton, the first thing you see is that there's empty units, there's units that have been in fact empty for decades in some cases, and it's because I think there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of problems in the way that the government is running these things. Business rates put people off, so I think regeneration of town centres is a really important thing.
Yeah, so how do these policy positions distinguish you from your other candidates?
14 years this Conservative government's been in, and we are where we are because of their party political positions. You know, their policies have put us in the place where last year, when Liz Truss was the Prime Minister, economic positions crashed the economy, right? And that's the difference between the previous government and the hopefully incoming Labour government, is that we're being very strict with how we understand our finances, being very careful with everything, and we need to get the country back on track. You know, we've got kind of 5 core areas that we want to focus on. The first is about getting Britain building again. We want to take back our streets. Haven't really talked about this yet, but community policing is one of the things that I think we've lost massively, and it's something that comes up all the time. I was chatting to one of your neighbours a few weeks ago, Paul, who was talking about how their shop had been smashed up because there's a huge amount of crime in the area. Making sure that we address the environment and the problems with the fact that we're not doing enough, I think, to sort the environment out. So switching on GB energy is Labour's big new policy on that front. I think we would love to create a new publicly owned service that we're calling GP Energy. The whole point is that we insource energy generation. We stop relying on Russia and other countries and foreign oil, and we start rebuilding energy generation locally. So more onshore wind, more offshore wind, solar power, proper green technologies. We also want to break down the barriers to opportunity, and this is our kind of like education core policy. I work in degree apprenticeships, right? I was saying this a minute ago, and I really passionately believe in the importance of better skills education and like lifelong skills education. We'd really like to reform the apprenticeship levy so that people have got access to skills training throughout their whole lives. The other one that I haven't mentioned that I think is absolutely the most important is getting the NHS back on its feet.
Yes.
Because one of the things that I haven't mentioned, but people tell me all the time, right? Knock on a door and you say, what are your big issues? And they talk about the potholes and the town centres, but they say, I can't get an appointment at the GPs anymore.
We feel we're the only party that's really offering this fair deal, fair to everybody. Not policies for their own constituents, and I say constituents, their own party members, rather than for everybody. For example, at the last election, didn't the Labour Party go in with a slogan, for the many, not the few? Why not for everybody?
So in what ways will you collaborate with other elected officials if you are elected, with stakeholders to implement your proposed policies?
Very good question. And obviously if I were elected, I would have a borough council that was Labour controlled and a county council that's Conservative controlled. I'm used to working with other parties. The parish council that I sit on has 3 Lib Dems, 2 Conservative and 2 Labour on it. So we do cooperate and get on and put party politics aside most of the time. It's not often that the Lib Dems are sat there thinking, should we become referee in this fighting match between the Labour and Conservative parts?
So what strategies do you propose to enhance economic growth and job opportunities within Erewash?
Well, that's an interesting one, and one I'm really passionate about. There are a lot of opportunities in terms of fighting climate change and the green economy in Erewash. For example, we've got a vast amount of older housing stock that needs updating, insulating, solar panels, that sort of thing. And the green economy, unlike the rest of the economy, grew, I think it was 8% last year. We are really behind green investment. We are committed to a just and fair transition, and there is economic growth to be had there.
How do you envision supporting education and community well-being initiatives to enhance the overall quality of life in Erewash?
Education is really important, and we need to make sure that people are aspiring to to getting education and have the opportunity to gain more qualifications, I should say, once they're working even. Because it's going to become an even more fluid workplace with the rise of things like AI and other technologies that are going to displace certain jobs and make people have to retrain and find other career paths and skill sets. So we're really supportive of education and trying to make it so that it's not just something you finish at 16 or 18. It's something that's a lifelong learning experience. If Erewash's well-being hasn't increased in that time, that would be a failure.
That I will fight for what's right for my community, and I'm not afraid to stand up and say, hang on a minute, you're not getting it right, and we need you. It's not right that those hotels were taken out of use of the hotels. It's not right for the people in those hotels, and it's not right for the community around where their local services are impacted. And I stood up time and time again until I got the result I wanted. I haven't quite finished yet, but the second hotel needs to be moved on as well. But yeah, my track record goes before me. It proves I will stand up for what's important to Erewash residents, and not just to go along with what's happening. I've always fight for Erewash.
Great. So how will you balance the need for development with the preservation of the community's character and environment? We have beautiful characters.
We do, yes. I got involved in politics, campaigning to protect the Green Belt. That's going back a number of years, and I was successful. It was against a big development. It's more than 10 years ago, and I will continue to do that. Yeah. I don't want to lose our Green Belt. That green open space is so precious. I will sort of bend over backwards to protect our precious Green Belt.
So how do you plan to actively engage with residents to understand their concerns and priorities?
Well, I think I always do that. Obviously, I've got my community office as a Member of Parliament, and that will continue. And people know that we're very approachable as a team. That's the parliamentary work, which is very important because that's helping people with issues that they can't solve themselves. Sometimes they find that they just don't get the right answers from the different authorities.
I have a streak of independence in me, unlike the other parties that are whipped. And I'm not, if I was a Green MP, I wouldn't have to follow my party's line. I wouldn't have to, and I wouldn't be chucked out of the party on a whim of a leader that we're seeing, who were ordered out of parties. Both the major political parties have purged their parties of independence and free-thinking voices. I would be free to follow the policies within reason, of course, deviating from my own political party, and I would happily do that if it was in the best interest of the people of Erewash. But what distinguishes us as Greens, it's the bottom up. We're a community-based political party that is more about equality, social justice and fairness. I am always and always will be people first, and people connected to the environment, connected to all our systems. That's how I would operate. So the policies I would take would be common sense policies, driven first and foremost by evidence and fact, not driven by what the lobbyists who get behind political organisations want, but actually driven by the evidence and the facts of the community. Not what they were told the facts are, but actually what the evidence says. So we're an evidence-based policy.
How do you plan to balance developmental goals with the need to protect our natural resources?
Sustainability. You balance, I fought against high-speed rail, which is a strange thing for a Green Party, because Green Party in principle is for high-speed rail. But I fought against HS2, an organisation that ignored people, bullied people, and wasted how many billions. And when I came to my decision on that, I weighed up all the evidence. I looked at the I looked at the good side of it, looked at the bad side of it, looked at the economic, I looked at the political, looked at the environmental, I looked at the social gains. Then I matched it with all the negative parts. And if the negative parts are greater than the positive parts, you don't do it. But if the negative parts can be mitigated, and you can negotiate with people and ask people and involve people, and you can come up with solutions, then you go ahead with that project. Yeah. That's the thing, that's how you do this. But you must involve people in the community. We've seen sham consultations with house building. We've seen sham consultations with HS2 where people were asked these questions, and I've seen these consultations, and even I with 2 degrees can't figure out what absolute jingo it is. So the system is rigged sometimes that people are left out of the loop. So it has to go back to ordinary people. What do we want? What do we need first? It has to be driven by our needs, not the property developer, not the investor, not the person who already has enough money in the bank account that they can squirrel it off in 49 tax havens around the world. It's got to be what the community needs and what the community desires, and what suits our needs in local community may not be the same in other areas. So it comes back again to the regionalism, comes back to the localism, comes back to the needs of individual communities being met with those projects that suit, again, bottom up. Let's not do big things. Small things repeated by a large group of people are infinitely more effective than one big project that benefits a small minority.
I agree with that one.
What is your long-term vision for Erewash?
Yeah, just happier, more content, more at ease, people feeling proud. Where's the pride gone? It's the pride in the community, pride in itself. And you see pockets of that, again, you see pockets of that with the likes of the Bennerley Viaduct. You see pockets of that in a kind of a sense that people, and I get that sometimes when I'm speaking to the children, what do you just expect, sir? I'm from here. And I'm looking and going, I'm a council house kid who grew up in the middle of the Troubles. My dad's a plasterer, mum's a housewife. I came from a very humble background. I strived and I worked hard to better myself, but I don't see the same pride. I see it giving up. I think just a lot of people have given up because they've just been treated so badly. They're so used to being treated like this that their expectations are so low. So I'd want people to raise their standards. I'd want people to have more civic pride. I'd want people to raise, of all classes, because we still have a class system in this country, and I still think we shouldn't have it, but it's still there. It's there in the outcomes, because again, it's there when your postcode should not define how long you live. Your postcode shouldn't define what GCSEs you get. Your postcode shouldn't define how likely you are to get flooded, or how likely you are to get asthma. All of those things are all connected. And unfortunately, those gaps are getting bigger because every single policy from the political establishment, the three political parties who've been in government the last 20 years, has not closed any of those gaps. They've widened it. So it's closing the gaps and making this a better place for everybody. Everybody. Not certain people, but everybody to live in.
For me, it's about working really closely with grassroots groups. So I've talked a couple of times about the new Friends of Ilkeston Town Centre. You know, I'd like to see similar groups picking up in Sandy Acre and in Long Eaton and elsewhere in the constituency, because it's local people with local ideas that really know how to drive forward their towns. You've got to empower local people, and I think if you do that, it helps bring forward the character. I mean, we've got loads of people who are really deeply invested in history in Ilkeston and in Long Eaton and all the villages around the area. We're really lucky around here, and I think it's about putting the power in the hands of local people to make sure that they want to do it. So if I'm the MP next time, I want to speak to people all the time about how we can work together. It's not about, I'm not the only person with good ideas. Everybody has brilliant ideas, and I think I'd like to work with people all the time.
What is your long-term plan for Erewash?
I'd love to be able to knock on doors in 5 years, 10 years, and people go, you know what, we elected a Labour government last time, and things are better now. I'd like to come back every time I knock on doors and people say, things have gotten a little bit better. Now, there's a long road and there's a lot of work to do, but I think we can do that over the coming few years, and I'd like to keep doing that. Long-term goal for Erewash, let's just make it a really, really great place to live. I want everybody in Ilkeston, Long Eaton, Draycott, Risley, Breaston, Sandy Acre. I want everybody to say, I'm from this place and I love it.
A healthier Erewash, built on getting a fair deal for the NHS. We need to have a joined-up approach to both health, well-being, mental health as well, because we need to get people back into the workforce who are long-term sick through mental health issues, and try and get everyone working so that we become a green powerhouse for the East Midlands, so that our small businesses are going out there, not just putting solar panels and insulation into houses in Erewash where it's sorely needed, but across the East Midlands. On the environment, not putting the sewage into our rivers when it rains too much, and looking at our housing stock to make sure it's resilient to the floods that will inevitably come from the fact that we live between three rivers.
Yeah, I think one thing that I know is very important is people be able to get around without getting stuck in roadworks. Now that actually is a county council issue, but I want to the one thing that I've been working on and would want to continue is getting the utilities to plan better. But the other thing, since the storm that we had in July 2020, when we had quite a few houses flooded, then Severn Trent have committed to investing, wait for it, £42 million in Ilkeston, because that's where there's more of a need to make sure that the infrastructure is right. The pipework and drainage underneath our roads is so old and can't cope with the many new houses we've had. So I'm very proud that I pushed Severn Trent to get that and to get it moving, to make sure that we can mitigate flooding in the future.
What is your long-term vision for Erewash, and how do you plan to work towards the vision during your term in office?
When I first was elected to Parliament, nobody could pronounce Erewash. They called it Erewash. I said, oh, is it clean? And they've no idea where it was. So over the last 9 years, I've managed to get it on the map and people know how to say Erewash, which is, so we're halfway there.
Right.
They haven't quite got to Ilson yet, but we'll get there. Lobby together to make sure that we keep people understanding where Erewash is and how important it is, and I'll continue to fight for it.
Thank you very much for your
Great,
time.
lovely. Thanks, Paul. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.